Hey, and welcome back to another episode of the Geek Centurions. It's me, your boy Eli.
It's me, Joe.
A bit of a throat thing, but I'm still here. But yeah, guys, we're here to talk about The Flash, the long-awaited 10-year developed movie, I guess is what we're going to call it.
Well, I mean, yeah, the Flash movie has been in a sort of a development hell for I think you
Way
said
too long.
10 years.
Yeah.
In the time the Flash movie has been in development, we had a Flash TV show start and end, right?
Yeah.
That's how long.
That's how long it is.
How long we've gotten a theatrical version of the Flash, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it is. It's been a long time coming, and I will say this: it's a movie, you know.
It is definitely a movie. I think we both went in with low expectations and came out being, I don't know how to feel about that. Because there was a lot of things I'm like, yeah, that could work. And then there's also a lot of things I'm like, why is this even here? Why are we doing this? This feels so weird and wrong in so many ways. The specific scenes that made me go like, why? A little bit of the Joss Whedon jokes are in there. I don't know if he had a hand in this. But, man, did this go through some shit. You can tell there was a lot of rewrites. I'll say that.
Yeah. It does feel like this movie has gone through various stages of being stuff. But, you know, the general, I think, synopsis, in case you haven't seen trailers or anything, is that, Barry decides to go back in time to save his mom, you know?
Yeah.
Because his mom died, and his father was more or less framed for it. They don't know who the killer was.
Yeah.
And, he goes back in time to, to fix it. And he sort of, returns and is like, oh, wait, things aren't the way they are anymore, kind of thing. So he has to have his younger self, and various other people help him out, try to, fix the timeline, get things back to normal, that sort of time travel shenanigans.
Mm-hmm.
And for the most part, I think the movie, has those sort of emotional beats that really sort of here's the movie has a through line. It has a message, a moral. Not I would say moral, but it has this sort of message, right?
It has this dilemma that the character has to go through, and it's at the center of it, but I don't think it's utilized very well. Right? There's not enough in there for me to be as interested in it as I would like to be. Right? And so there's not much for me to really go with. If I'm making any sense.
There's a lot of elements that I think what you're trying to say is there's a lot of elements that are could have been expanded upon.
Yeah.
Could have been a bit more focused on. But there's other stuff that's okay, but why are we doing it like this?
Why are we deciding to go about it in this formal way? Right? That's a very good point. It's interesting, man. I think it's best that we just give our thoughts on it and then go from there. The way we usually do it for you guys who are new, we give a minute of our thoughts on the film, and then we both go further into the discussions. So, Joey, why don't you start us off with your thoughts starting now?
So, The Flash, like I said, is a very interesting movie. It tries to hit a lot of these emotional moments, and sometimes they work, but there are moments where it doesn't work. There's certain jokes that land, some don't. Obviously, I think one of the big issues that have been floating around is the CG. And it is a little funky and weird. Sometimes I can kind of maybe get it. Other times it's just, no, that just looks bad. That's you're coping. But overall, there's a lot of interesting plot elements that seem to we want to be done but aren't executed properly, and other things that are like, okay, that actually has a bit of emotion to it. But overall, The Flash is just a very jumbled mess, but it's at least coherent enough that you can kind of understand where they wanted this story to go, you know?
Yeah, perfectly timed. Now for my turn. The Flash is a movie that you have to go in remembering there's a lot of things going on around it, and you have to separate that from what the film is, because the film, you know, in of itself, I feel is trying to capture that feel of the original comic, but it the development was so much going on with it that it didn't really reach the heights that it wanted. There's a lot of things that, you know, start off as a good idea but never really fully materialize, and it's not really executed well because of it, and it makes the movie a little worse in my opinion. The action scenes are alright, but they could have been a lot more interesting. The characters, I feel, are just alright. There's nothing really for me to latch on to. A movie that was based on a comic where Barry wanted to save his mom should feel very emotional, but I felt like there was barely much of emotion in there. And I guess that's my thought. Obviously, the first thing we're going to say about the movies that we're taking the equation of what Ezra Miller has done out, hence why I stated that earlier, because that would be unfair to most of the people that worked on this film. But yes, Ezra Miller is kind of a questionable person at this point. They have done some stuff that I do not agree with, and the fact that we have allowed this movie to continue this, you know, that's a different discussion all around. But we're just going to be here talking about the movie itself, and I feel like the movie itself, even if we didn't know about all the stuff that he did, I feel like still wouldn't it doesn't help its chances of it being like good or bad.
Yeah, Ezra was involved in a lot of various controversies, like before the release of The Flash. You can probably just look up a bunch of those things, and yeah, it is kind of
it sucks.
Consensus that it sucks that he pretty much faced little to no consequences for these actions, and seeks to benefit quite a bit for this movie, which I'm gonna assume is gonna make quite a bit of money because
it's actually tracking to be low.
But yeah, it's a whole conversation. There's a bunch of videos discussing his various adventures, I would say.
Is that what we're calling it?
Yeah. So yeah, it's out there. You can make your own opinions about it. But overall, it's just a very not good situation, and I don't know how. Yeah, Warner Bros. Hasn't really handled it in the best ways.
No, they have not. But to the movie's credit, they at least try to make Barry an interesting character. They try, even though I feel like some of the Joss Whedon and isms that was attached to him from like the first Justice League, because this is following the first Justice League movie, Joss Whedon's Justice League, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not Snyder Cut, which obviously that would make sense because there's no way you can connect the two, right? So you're gonna get a little bit of that. So that if you didn't like that kind of Flash, you're gonna get a little bit of him. It goes away real quick. I'll say that, but there is a bit of that in there.
Yeah. It is kind of interesting seeing the two Barrys interact, because one is younger, a bit more immature, and definitely a bit obnoxious, and even Barry himself acknowledges like, wow, that's how it is on the other side. Okay,
Wow, I'm changing my rifle.
But yeah, that's sort of that's an interesting dynamic of just sort of like Barry essentially kind of having to be his own mentor.
Yeah, which. Again, it goes to what we were saying, right? Good ideas, but like not executed so well. Because while he's teaching him, there's not enough moments for him to be like, "Hey, you gotta listen to me, man. I've been through this shit. I've been through it. I know how to help. I know how to go. Listen to what I say because it's gonna help you in the long run." that's not what happens often, which I feel is very, underutilized, in my opinion. I don't know about you.
I mean, I think that's kind of the point. Is that this Barry is young and rash and immature, and because young Barry is doing all these things, and
Yeah.
Our Barry is very much like having to like try to rein him in, and like they do have a bits of talk and discussion, like, hey, take this seriously, man. This is some potentially world-ending stuff. It's like, yeah, well, it's like, he's very lax and stuff, and it's an interesting dynamic. And I think it's supposed to, I feel like, show like, okay, for Barry, like, all right, this is like someone who hasn't been dealt the hand I've been dealt. I need to, sort of.
He's not ready.
Yeah.
He's in a way he romanticizes the idea of what being a superhero kind of is, compared to like what it really is, right? Because like there are moments where he's like, oh, I got powers, I can do this. I was like, and our Barry's like, no, we can't do everything, dude. We can only do so much. We can do the best we can, and that's I feel like that should be an interesting discussion to have in the movie, but it's a little too late in my opinion, if you know what I'm saying. If you've seen the movie. But this movie is very secretly inspired by the Flashpoint comic.
I wouldn't say secretly.
I know it's not, and we've had this discussion before, off mic, where it feels weird that we had to do our first Flash movie, our first introduction to him, and on the silver screen for millions to watch that aren't watching the television show, and we're doing Flashpoint, which is like a movie that's all about already having an established universe, and the changes it could have from time travel. Like Flashpoint isn't an old story; it's from like 2010. It is not that old. It just barely hit 20, dude. No, it'll barely hit 10. I'm sorry. Jesus. But yeah, no, it's not an old story. It's fairly still kind of like newish, and even the creator's still doing stuff like that around. So I find it very interesting that they decided to go about that route with making that our first Flash movie.
Well, I mean, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, I know the reasons probably.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a big reason why Flashpoint. Well, why this Flash movie is basically a loose adaptation of the Flashpoint comic, and it's because of all the all the shenanigans involving DC with their movies over the past couple years. There's definitely, I think, part of me that feels like there was, when the Flash movie was first getting written and all that stuff, that, hey, we want to do this sort of certain story with the Flash, this and that. But then, things sort of change at Warner Brothers and DC, just all these different studio heads and this and that. And then, the original idea for the DCU not really panning out as well as people wanted it to. Sort of just kind of lets out, you know what? We need to, we need a reset. We need to restart our DC movie franchise. And, for Warner Brothers, they were like, all right, how do we do that? Well, we'll just use The Flash, because there's a very popular story. It's probably his most well-known story. It
doesn't involve him dying.
Well, yeah. Where, he goes back in time and just causes a whole universal reset on accident, kind of. And, yeah, that's sort of like the idea here. That, it's very loosely based off those events, and that, he has to go through all these sort of nonsense. And, it's fine that is the way you're going with it, but it's kind of like how Batman v Superman uses the whole Death of Superman storyline.
Yeah,
But,
that's a really good comparison, actually.
Because it feels like, really, our second appearance with Superman, we have to do the whole Death of Superman thing where he dies, Doomsday. Like, you kind of get, I get the idea behind it, is that I'm assuming people were just like, why do we need a Justice League when Superman can do everything, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, what if the reason we have a Justice League is because Superman dies, and then the rest of the heroes, like Batman stuff, has to group together because now there's a new threat, and now we don't have a Superman to deal with it. So we need to get all the rest of the heroes to join up and fight that new threat.
Which is such bull that, like, I've always had a problem with them, like, using the Death of Superman so early, because that is a thing that that is a storyline that kind of needs the weight it deserves, right? It needs time to cook. You can't just throw it out there, right? Like, you need time to develop this Superman who's like, this is his second outing, right? Not really his second movie, his second outing, right? You haven't really developed, his love for the world. He's willing to save it, but you don't develop his caring for it. Therefore, making like a lot of the stuff that happens in the movie kind of like useless. Because like one of the great things about seeing him fight because he wants to protect the people. He loves the people. Obviously he loves Lois, so that's already there. You don't need to explore that. You gotta need to more explore his fascination with the world. And granted, you could say he has that with the conversations he has with Ma and Ghost Paw, but like it never really like feels like we've reached that echelon, right? It never feels like we made it to that point to where the death was justified, and it really bothered me when they did that. Especially like it's like, man, what would have been cool to see like the rest of the leaguers, be a part of this. And there's ways you can have written around like establishing a Justice League, and it's kind of similar in this where, like, it's only shades of Flashpoint. Because like the whole point of Flashpoint is that Barry saves his mom from dying, he saves his family, and there's like a consequence to it, right? Here, it feels like we barely even hit the consequences. It just became like I guess the best example would be the stuff that happens in Back to the Future 2, right? When like Marty comes back and like everything's changed, but like. Unlike where in Back to the Future 2, where you feel like the weight of like, oh shit's changed, right? Biff's in charge. Here it's like, oh well, just certain people aren't here. That's just it.
Yeah, I mean the whole crux is that there are no metahumans, basically.
Yeah.
In this reality that Barry has accidentally made, and huge stretch shows up and there's no one really to stop it. So now Barry has to find some way to fix that. And, it is... No, I mean, yeah, like the original Flashpoint comic just has like this sort of like, not just, like things have changed, but like for the worst. Like people's lives are all sorts of... Yeah, no, because in... the Flashpoint universe basically is like, yeah, everything is, yeah, like, it's kind of like this thing of like, yeah, Barry saving his mom's life essentially just creates a worse world.
Yeah.
Where, the Amazons and the Atlanteans are at war, causing potentially, like, for humanity to get caught in crossfires. Superman was found by the government. He's been tested on. He's not the Superman that we know. Well, the most famous part of the Flashpoint comics, in my opinion, where instead of Bruce's parents dying, Bruce dies, and then his dad becomes Batman, while his mom, traumatized by what happened to her son, becomes the Joker. Which, that's just one of those, like, things that are like, oh yeah, that's freaking cool. That's such a cool concept, right? And yeah, like, this movie doesn't really have a lot of that stuff.
No, it doesn't.
Really, it's only just, yeah, there's just no superheroes in this universe anymore, except for maybe, Michael Keaton's Batman. But yeah, there's no one really to stop this new threat showing up, and now Barry realizes, well,
Shit.
yeah, that's on me, I guess.
Yeah.
When yeah, I do agree. I think with there could have been more like just crazy like changes
Yeah.
or like just like oh yeah, my mom's alive, but now straight up it's almost a near dystopia kind of thing, right?
Yeah. I mean, and I get why it's supposed to be like that. It's supposed to like lead you in, like, oh, everything's fine. So you find out the big twist, like, oh, these people aren't around. Oh, what are we gonna do? Kind of shit, right?
Yeah.
But it always felt kind of like, it's not as cool as it you trying to make it out to be. Um, but aside from that, obviously we got like Michael Keaton back as Batman, and I don't know how'd you feel about that, Michael Keaton being back.
I thought it was all right. I mean, seeing Michael Keaton back as Batman was kind of is just was neat. Although I feel like I don't know, just kind of interesting to see how his career has been for the most part. Like obviously, like he had Birdman, which is kind of just an allegory of his time playing Batman, and then we get him as the Vulture in the MCU, which again, which I feel like he had. I don't know. I don't know. It just feels like, I guess for me, as much as cool as it is seeing Michael Keaton back as like that old version of Batman, on the whole, it just kind of just seems like, or like it just seems like all right. Like you would think it'd be more hype than it is, but it kind of just like, oh yeah, okay.
He just says the lines.
He just has a couple of like notable lines from the old movie, and it's like, yeah, all right, yeah, that's neat, I guess.
It's funny because I remember people, comparing it to No Way Home, right? Because I think it's the obvious comparison they're gonna make, right? Where we got Toby and Andrew back, and while I love Michael Keaton as Batman, he was like, he was my first Batman in film, and I love him for it. Just him being kind of okay in the movie is kind of the sad part, I would say, right? Because like he doesn't have much to work with, or is that much. It's not that he's not in it much, but he's just kind of like okayish, right? Whereas like someone like Toby and Andrew, they had a role to play, right? Like Toby was kind of like the mentor and like the one like looking after all of them, and like it was in a way kind of like Andrew's like last time as Spider-Man and giving it kind of his all. Him being kind of like one of the more emotional moments in the movie, and like that scene with all three of them together. It's like it feels like like a natural scene between these three characters. Well, this one feels like it's kind of like, oh, you're not my Bruce. You're old.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, I guess it's all right. They do have a good moment. That's mostly just it, in my opinion. It just feels kind of sad, in my opinion. It's like it's kind of like, oh, he's kind of here, What do you want to know? What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think I understand where you're coming from. I honestly was more of just when it comes to, I guess, the comparisons of, I guess, No Way Home to this movie. When it comes to at least Batman, I felt the thing about how No Way Home uses a lot of at least the two Spider-Men, like Tobey and Andrew, like, yeah, I kind of, I guess I agree, like, Toby is the more experienced. He's been through a lot more. Like he's kind of just, helps the other two out a bit. And I feel like if anything, Andrew's Spider-Man is given a bit more emotional stuff because his trilogy, he didn't get his like ending trilogy, right? He only got his 2 movies and then it got canned, right? So he gets a little bit more emotional beats, right? He saves MJ, which is like him essentially redeeming himself for not being able to save Gwen, all these sort of things. And you have like, the conversations they have, they're just like, we're bonding,
Yeah.
kind of things. Here, yeah, it is just kind of like, oh, it's just another like Batman kind of thing. Like we don't get much of a Michael Keaton like reminiscing about his times as being Batman because um, he does it, say in the story like, yeah, I haven't been doing Batman stuff for a while. People don't really need me anymore, kind of thing. Like that could have been. I feel like it could have been kind of an interesting thing, but like, yeah, but people remember you though. You used to be like this cool guy, and now
Yeah.
this and that, and it's like there's not really much of that. It's just, yeah, I was Batman, and what's that? You need me to help you again? Yeah, sure. I'll don the suit, I guess. And then I'll say one or two lines that people really like that I said back in the first movie. It kind of sucks too because I feel like it would have been kind of neat to see because I feel like the Bat Cave in this movie doesn't feel like the Bat Cave of the original. I don't know.
No,
Maybe
it
that's just
doesn't.
me. But yeah, I guess to talk about the other character that is kind of like in this movie that's sort of like different. Supergirl.
Oh, Kara, you are so cool. It is great to see Supergirl again in the silver screen. When when I actually see her in the silver screen, not the one that was way back in the 80s.
Yeah, I mean it's her. Yeah, it's like the first Supergirl, like in a movie, and since the '80s, since her the first the Supergirl movie back in the day. Yeah, and it's kind of sad that she isn't really that utilized much. Like she's really only there to serve a plot point more or less. And also to be the twist of we need to get Superman. What? Superman's not here, but we have Supergirl? Sure. And that's really about it. I think she's fine. It feels like there probably was a version of this movie that had her a bit more in this.
Yeah,
personally.
Because she only shows up towards the halfway mark, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Or close to nearing the last third.
Yeah, and she gets into the big fights and stuff because
because you need the Supergirl, and she's not terrible. It's just that she's kind of just there half the time.
Yeah, and it kind of sucks especially because I'm pretty sure there was was it an old trailer that was hey, this is all the DC movies coming out kind of thing. Remember? And there's there was a moment where it's those three characters, the two berries and Supergirl, kind of lined up.
Yeah.
And that shot's not in the movie, which is why I say maybe Supergirl did have a bit more lines and bits of bonding with the rest of the team, but it's more just yeah, all right, I'll help you guys out, But yeah, like I said, Supergirl is just kind of underutilized, which is kind of sad. Really like to see more of her. Who knows? Maybe in the next iteration of the DC universe, we will probably get that.
Well, James Gunn is making another Supergirl movie, so we'll get that. So, but yeah, it's also kind of weird how it ends with her. I'm not gonna go that deep into it, but it's man, do I have to watch this over and over again? I get the point. I get it. I don't need to watch this all over again. But yeah, you'll see. Zod is alright because he's just kind of there. There's an actual villain, but there's nothing. The villain doesn't really do much, I guess.
It's more of they set Barry on this path, and they're kind of just. It's not until the end where you're yes, I've set you on this path, Barry, and this is the conclusion of our, of this whole thing. And yeah, I mean, I guess it's just kind of weird. It's a consequence of, I think, adapting the Flashpoint storyline because
it's a very dense, not that dense, but there's a lot of stuff in there that. You have to work around, especially when you're making a essentially a universal reset movie, and you barely have a universe to reset.
Yeah, like I don't know. To make this your movie, just this event of like, yeah, we're just gonna reset the universe kind of thing. When most of the times that doesn't really need to be done.
No,
you just say, yeah, we're just making a new film franchise. It's not connected to the other ones. Don't worry about it.
Yeah,
but I don't know. They saw an opportunity to adapt the Flashpoint storyline, and they took it, and it was a decent effort.
It was pretty weak, dude. like as it's weak in the same way as I feel people say the adaptation of the God Butcher storyline and like the Almighty Thor is in Love and Thunder.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like at least in Love and Thunder they at least try to be somewhat close to like what the theme is with those books, right?
Yeah.
Because in Jane Foster's Thor, right, it's all about her like proving to the gods that like she can do this. It's also her trying to overcome her ailment of having cancer, and you get some of that, and it's kind of like the whole point of her, like why she wants to fight. You know, she doesn't want to feel weak. She doesn't want to seem weak. She wants to be part of the, you know, show that she can still, do something. And like in Thor, the Thor side of the God Butcher storyline is like Gore kind of just eventually coming to hate the gods because it's like, oh, you're all powerful gods and you can do stuff, but you choose not to. So screw you. But then meets Thor, who's like willing to give all of it up for the person he loves, who is this weak, not weak, but like this dying human, someone he loves, and he relates to that because that's similar to what happened to him and his daughter. There's levels of like still kind of feeling that, capturing that feel of the book, right? Here, I don't get that, if I'm being honest. It feels like you just kind of slapped it in there for me.
Yeah, I know. I definitely get where you're coming from. Like it does, like it does feel a little bit of and I think that's sort of the point of where I come from, where it's like why did this like? It's very clear that outside sources made this into a Flashpoint movie.
Yeah.
And you kind of feel that, like, for me, I think there's still elements of, like, stuff where it's, like, it tries to have this message of, like, yeah, there's just some things you can't change or, like,
yeah,
more so of, like, the past is what makes you who you are today. And if you try to change the past, you won't be you anymore kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Or, like, our lives shape who we are, and to try to change that is just bad.
Yeah, no, and I get that, and I feel like that's what the whole point of the movie is. But if I'm being honest, I feel like it kind of lacked in the execution. Obviously this is a multiversal story. Aspects of the multiverse are shown, and I'm just gonna let you say that.
It's pretty bland. There are other like references to other things, and you're kind of just like, I don't know, it feels a bit rushed, a bit bland, and you're kind of just like, why is this a thing? And also, why does it feel like you could have gone more? But also, why does it feel like I didn't want more? Like,
yeah,
there could have been a bit more in here, but knowing what you show me so far here, I don't think I want more. But yeah, like
there was a moment, and like I got spoiled by this scene, right, of the multiverse. It's made its run on Twitter, so you probably already know what I'm talking about. I've seen it, and I was like, oh god, I hope this is fake. I really hope this is fake. And when I saw it happening, I immediately turned to you, and the first thing I saw was a look of disgust.
I mean, there's some certain CG faces, and I'm just like, ugh. Why? He's still alive. Why couldn't you get him in an actual suit? God.
Like, even if it was, like, if it looked good, would you still be okay with it scene?
I don't know. I think I understand why what people saw when they watched Rogue One and they saw General Tarkin and Leia,
Yeah.
you know, being reconstituted, you know, and it's just like, to be fair, in those movies, I feel like it didn't look that bad. Like the Leia de-aging effect didn't look bad to me at all, honestly. Um, but I understand why people didn't like General Tarkin because he does look a little weird, and I think as a whole, it's a whole cosm of like, yeah, the CG is just not there, man. Like I know people have been dunking on like Marvel movies for having not great CG over the past couple like movies, but this one is just like I would have said this looks like a bad video game, but I feel like that's a disservice to video games.
Jesus.
You could argue, you know, like I think I was like saying like, hey man, this is like, you know, like I don't know. It's just like it's not like it's like an old PS3 game with some of these CG sequences, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, ugh. Injustice looks better than this.
Injustice 1 looks better than that.
I was saying, yeah.
Jesus Christ. But yeah. But you know, when you see it, you know. But I think that's about as much as I can say about this movie. But yeah, I think your statement of I want it more, but I don't want more is very adamant with this movie.
Yeah, well, yeah, like I wanted more, but if you're gonna deliver it like this, I don't want it.
Yeah. So I guess right now we can give our ratings. Jerry, what is your rating for this movie? Be honest.
I am honestly probably gonna give this like a 6 out of 10.
Yeah.
Like there are elements that I think I liked about it. There are action sequences that I think are solid, although like I think the first opening one where he's like saving people at a hospital is just, there's just some stuff where it's like, oh, this is just, I think I was like watching it and I was like, this is silly, but not in a good way.
Not in a fun Flash way.
It's just like, this is just contrived and it's bizarre.
There were a lot of scenes that I looked at you and you were like, you could have cut this down. You could have cut this.
And yeah, there's some comedy bits that some of them are like, okay, that's kind of funny. And the other ones are like, this is just too long. I don't understand. You could easily just kept this joke to like a 1-2 line thing. You know, like there's a certain moment like where we talk about where it's like, oh yes, Barry realizes the universe is different because he can't find certain people. And they have a whole joke about like, you know, it's like this joke that happens I think in a lot of like time travel movies or whatever where it's like, hey, that person who's an actor is playing a movie that they're not supposed to be in, right?
Do you remember the whole Shazam thing?
Yeah.
With Sinbad and Shaquille?
Yeah, where people think, you know, the Mandela effect kind of thing, where like people think there was a movie called Shazam starring Shaquille O'Neal or whatever.
No, it's the other one.
Oh no, it's Kazam starring Sinbad, but there is a movie called no, it was Shazam starring Sinbad, but there was a movie called Kazam starring Shaquille O'Neal.
Yeah. And
people swear to God or whatever, like, no, there was a movie with Sinbad as a genie.
Think of that joke, but done to
like death.
Yeah.
You know, where the thing is, the joke could have easily have like landed perfectly if you know, any of these characters realize that they have phones or computers that they can look stuff up on, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, there is certain action sequences that look good, other ones that are like, that just looks like a poorly rendered video game, and not even a good one. And then there's some jokes that are like, okay, that's kind of funny, to other ones that are like, please, for the love of God, cut this down. I don't need this to be that long of a joke. We get the joke, all right?
Yeah.
And there's moments where like, you know, okay, I get that I feel a bit of the emotional weight there. And the other ones were like, I don't know, that just doesn't feel like it has that much emotion. Like I felt more emotion watching the ending to like Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and it feels like this should have as equal weight of an emotion, but it doesn't.
It doesn't.
You know, yeah.
I mean, I'm with you. I'm giving this a 6. I did not, and it's not that I did not enjoy it. There were moments I'm like, okay, that's fun. Okay, that's cool. There was like one joke that made me go like, "Ha, that's a really good one. I like that." But there was a lot of times where I just felt like I was just like strangling, dude. Like I was like, are we done yet? Is this okay? We're still going. All right. Okay. Um, it I don't know. It's just something about the way this film is scripted that made me feel really bothered by it. And again, I think it's just because it's been in development for 10 years. And a lot of times when you hear it's development in 10 years, it's either a good thing or a bad thing, you know? It doesn't matter if it's a movie or a video game because, like, you know, it had a lot of difficulty in development. And you can't escape that fact. But even so, it feels it just needed more time, or just needed a better, you know, script. Because I feel like Flash deserves a good movie, and this is not it. And Jesus Christ, man, it's bad. It's not. It's not it. I really want it. Like I said, I wanted more. But if this is what you're giving me, I don't want it.
Yeah. It is kind of interesting of that. Yeah, you know, the movie does go with full on like yeah, we know that this is gonna be sort of like the last of like
Yeah.
the DCEU as they originally called it, and then I do know I think James Gunn came out recently saying that Blue Beetle will be kind of the first one
Yeah.
of the new DC universe. But I don't know where that puts Aquaman at this point. Aquaman
No.
2. Like could it also be, or is it also like, will it be like the last like DC movie that was, you know, part of the, you know, Zack Snyder and then later Jeff Johns and all these other people's visions and shit, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll see. At least we know there's someone competent selling the sales, you know.
You selling the, you know, taking the helm on the DC movie fronts,
Yeah.
right? But yeah, hopefully, you know, whatever James Gunn does is cool and unique and all that other stuff. But as for right now, the Flash, yeah, it's honestly kind of mid, you know, and
It's very mid.
you know, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, a lot of those early screening like reviews of it. Oh my god, this is like the most.
This is just the new Dark Knight.
You know, like this is what superhero movies are all about, and it's just like I don't know.
What were you watching?
I know people have thought that there's a conspiracy that Disney buys out reviews to make Marvel movies look good, which is not true at all. By the way, if anyone believes that, but this, like all those early test screening reviews, now make me think. I think DC was just started giving people money.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie.
We lost Batgirl for this.
You're not wrong.
I mean, Batgirl could have been bad too, but like, at least we would have known.
Yeah. Now we will never know if Batgirl was good or not.
Yeah. But like, jeez. But yeah, no. If you guys enjoyed what you heard, be sure to follow us on all social medias, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. We're most active on Instagram. There you'll find a link to all podcasting sites. We're officially part of like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, and we have a link to the YouTube for your other listeners out there who want to put a face to the voice. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe on there, hit the bell icon, and you do a Patreon for any support. And yeah, that's been our thoughts on the Flash. Let's hope Blue Beetles will be better. I need Blue Beetle to be good.
I'll say this: at least I had more fun watching The Flash than Black Adam.
That's fair. Jesus. But yeah, anyways, guys, have a good one. You have a good time. Peace.